Hello and welcome to another edition of the Peninsula Biz Buzz. My name is Shelley Smith, brought to you here in cohorts with the Chamber as well as a liaison as a board member for the Peninsula SHRM. Bob, over to you today.
Hey everybody, Bob McKenna from the Virginia Peninsula Chamber. And today, as we have done in the past several episodes on Peninsula Biz Buzz, we're going to focus on recovery from COVID-19. And we're going to start focusing on some of the positive aspects of things that are going on in the Hampton Roads area that will help us recover quicker than other areas. So today with us, we have Brad Williamson, who happens to be a very good friend of mine from the Navy. He's a retired Navy Rear Admiral. He is also an executive committee member for the Peninsula Chamber Board, and he is the chairman of the Military Affairs Council at the Peninsula Chamber. He has recently been named executive director of MIBE, which stands for Maritime Industrial Base Ecosystem. And I am not going to steal any more of his thunder. I'm going to hand it over to him and say, Brad, tell us about MIBE.
Hey, well, thanks so much, Bob. Shelley, thanks for having me here today. The Maritime Industrial Base Ecosystem was kind of a brainchild that started about 18 months ago. So well in advance of the current COVID-19 situation. And the thought behind it was as certain industry leaders here in Hampton Roads looked at their workforce, what they realized is that, for example, if they needed additional welders to support a maritime industry project, they could figure out how to offer the right incentives and perhaps garner those welders to support their company. But in retrospect, as they went forward, they realized that they were actually just stealing those welders from another company here in Hampton Roads, some of those companies that were actually providing them products. And therefore, there was a realization that we really needed to look at the workforce, specifically in the trade areas, in a more holistic manner across Hampton Roads to understand what the true requirements were, not just in the near term, but in the outlying years. And so MIBE was formed to try and get stakeholders across Hampton Roads, from industry, trade groups, educational institutions, to work together to kind of look at these problems across the maritime industry and to come up with kind of assessments of where both the workforce was and in another case where the supply chain was at.
So this initiative, and you go back 18 months when it first started, was initially called America Builds and Repairs Great Ships. And I loved that title, even though it's a little bit kind of awkward and lumpy maybe. It's very aspirational. It says, hey, this area, well, our country builds and repairs great ships, but this area is kind of the maritime center of excellence. We have the shipyard that designs, builds, and refuels nuclear carriers. It's the only shipyard in the world that does that. So that's pretty special, right? So this is a very important initiative.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Bob. I spoke with someone who does shipping industry analysis for CNBC last week, and I highlighted to them, because they had never been to the Hampton Roads area, that this is the only place, not just in the United States, but in the world, that you have the confluence of the world's largest naval base in Norfolk, one of the top 6 actually port facilities in the United States in the Port of Virginia, and the largest builder of any type of platform in the United States in Newport News Shipbuilding. Those 3 entities in and of themselves as a triangle don't exist anywhere else in the world. You would have to take San Diego Naval Base, move it up to the Port of Los Angeles, and then find some giant shipbuilder to move in Los Angeles to replicate that somewhere else in the United States. So I argue to everyone that Hampton Roads is the center of the maritime industry in the United States. I don't know if we've always done a great job articulating it, but it's one of the things that certainly the people that are involved in the industry, whether it's on the Navy side, on the commercial shipping side, on the ship construction and maintenance side, everyone that's here in Hampton Roads recognizes that. We have to be now figure out how to articulate that, understand it, and then understand what the challenges and the opportunities are by actually being the center of maritime industry in the United States.
So, and I've been calling it the Maritime Triangle. I mean, you hit all three parts of that triangle, right? We've got, like you said, the largest Navy base in the world, this great port, the Port of Virginia, and the shipbuilding industry actually literally form a triangle in the Hampton Roads. And a lot of times that's kind of we've taken it for granted here. So we just did this 757 regional branding initiative. And that I thought should have been the real focus. And it was one of the main focus areas is our maritime strength. So starting an initiative like this and taking somebody of your caliber to lead it was important even before COVID. Tell us why it's even more important after COVID.
Well, as you know, you and I have talked about this a little bit, Bob, but we did a workforce assessment and a supply chain study as part of the MIBE efforts that really culminated right as the COVID-19 situation was happening. And obviously, you could take those studies and kind of push them out to people, but they wouldn't reflect the real current situation that we have right now. Anyone who's paying attention understands that the workforce has been severely impacted by COVID-19. I would tell you pre-COVID-19, the issue was we had trouble coming up with the people to fill some of the maritime industry trades that we needed. So we had training available, but we didn't have the kind of input to put into that pipeline. That may not be as much of an issue. On the backside of this, we may have people that are looking for jobs, and then I think the urgency will shift to how quickly and efficiently can we train those individuals to be part of the maritime trades and get them to work doing the business. But if you look in the Hampton Roads area, as we look into the future, it's not just those things that we already discussed. We expect offshore wind to happen here in the near future. We have the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel Expansion Project, the I-64 expansion project. There is a lot happening here that call on the similar type of trade skills that are used in the maritime environment, but could be applicable to these other things. And so we don't want to just look myopically just at the maritime. So as an organization, MIBE is trying to integrate our work with other folks across Hampton Roads that are looking at this in even a more holistic manner for the entirety of the workforce that might be required for these trades. That said, we're blessed in Hampton Roads to have the things that we already discussed. I feel kind of a tragic sense for communities across the United States that don't have any of those things to bolster the economy through this COVID-19 crisis and in the immediate aftermath of what we'll see in the economy. Having this stability that the workforce that's still building ships at Newport News Shipbuilding and Norfolk Naval Shipyard and the rest of the maritime industry across Hampton Roads, having the Port of Virginia, which still has container ships coming in and ships going out, and having Norfolk Naval Base that employs so many people, along with Langley Air Force Base, Fort Eustis, the Yorktown base up here in Yorktown for the Coast Guard, the Yorktown Weapons Station. There is so much here that remains funded, remains employing people, along with the large retiree population, military and government retiree population that continues to get paychecks. Those things will all bolster the Hampton Roads economy in the short term, as hopefully the rest of the economy can get back up on step as we move forward and come out of the COVID-19 crisis. Obviously, other areas in the country don't have all of those dynamics working in their favor, and they are working in our favor. They have been for the past couple of months. They'll continue to do so as we go forward. Then the question becomes, what can we do? What can the maritime industry do now to help Hampton Roads recover faster and stronger coming out of this? As you and I discussed way back in March, what is the new normal going to look like for the economy? How does the maritime part of that fit in? And how can we help the rest of Hampton Roads recover?
Over to you, Shelley.
Well, Brad, with all of that information and obviously all those exciting projects, it begs the question, do you have the engagement from the right stakeholders right now inside of Hampton Roads?
Well, it's interesting. I came on board here on the 27th of March, and in the week leading up to taking over, I had the chance to engage many of those stakeholders across Hampton Roads. I've continued to do so for the first 2 weeks in the position. And it really is amazing to me. You hear sometimes people talk about, the different organizations in Hampton Roads not cooperating the way they should. I can tell you that every single person I engaged was 100% on board. And what I've tried to stress to them, in the words of Harry Truman, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit. We should all want Hampton Roads, especially the maritime industries, to move forward in a strong way. I don't really care who gets the credit. Let's just get after the work.
Love it. Perfect, appropriate quote. Bob?
So before we rolled into COVID, right now I was supposed to be engaged with Newport News Public Schools, teaching kind of the leadership aspect of a program that was called an early career welding program that they just started with a grant from Newport News Shipbuilding. We had 10 students in that learning welding. So 10 students doesn't even scratch the surface. We need 200 students in that early career welding. I think it's going to be easier these days, like as you alluded to recruit kids into doing something like that. But there's still some resistance from educators and parents who think that shipbuilding is like it was 30 years ago. I mean, there's some great technological advances that are ongoing, and Newport News Shipbuilding is doing amazing things. VMASC is doing amazing things in the technology realm. Can you talk a little bit to parents and guidance counselors out there and say, hey, here's what the shipbuilding industry looks like now?
Yeah, I won't get too technical, but first of all, to your first point, I won't get into the exact numbers, but the requirement for welders going forward with all the different projects that are coming online are significant. And they get only more significant as we move forward and offshore wind comes online. I would compare, if you look at the cost to go to college and to get a degree and the entry-level jobs that are available for most people as they come out of college, and you compare that to what the training pipeline is for a welder and what that welder can make coming out of their training pipeline, it would at least make you pause and say, hey, what am I doing here? Why am I not talking to my child about this as a potential opportunity? But from a technology standpoint, digital shipbuilding that's being worked at VMASC and Newport News Shipbuilding and others across here, along with AutoCAD and all the other things that are really technically require great technical skill, are going to continue to move forward. And again, things like offshore wind will bring a whole nother technology requirement here to Hampton Roads. So anybody who thinks that a job in welding or being an electrician or one of those other trades that's highly in high demand, not just now but in the future, isn't a great career path, that's one of the education things we have to do, is to educate people that these jobs are going to be here 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. I'm not sure all the other jobs that people are starting now are going to be here. And this current situation, I think, highlights some of that. And hopefully, you mentioned what I'll refer to as a pre-apprentice program. There's many models going on in those areas. And I think we have to kind of go through those and find the best of class of those pre-apprenticeship programs and figure out how we can apply them, especially to our high school students here in Hampton Roads, and maybe even earlier in the middle school area where we've kind of lost some of that hands-on training that we used to have. I'll tell you, my nephew is an HVAC guy down in Alabama, and I know what it costs when I have the HVAC guy come to my house here in Hampton Roads. That is a highly skilled, highly well-paid job. And we've got to get away from the stigma that's attached to some of these positions, because as those people move up and become supervisors and stuff, really their career path is unlimited.
I don't have a follow-up question, but rather a comment that it just goes completely in sync with all the initiatives from a regionalism and why people need to stay here and or move back here. And you know, how our market actually can stand up, to your earlier comments, to just anybody now. And it's really thrilling times of unlimited innovation, and like you said, advancement and sustainability. So just a comment. Bob, back over to you.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up. Is that right, Shelley? We're going to wrap up now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm trying to look at the plaques behind you, Brad. Is there a USS
Yeah.
Astocia plaque on the wall?
There is one back there.
Yeah, so USS Astocia FFG 15, Brad Williamson and Bob McKenna served on that and made that ship great 33 years ago. So with a little help from our friends.
Yeah.
Brad, I look forward to working with you on this important project and bringing our economy back to full recovery in the next several years. And I really look forward to our next beer together too. So
Well,
stay
thanks,
safe,
Bob.
my friend.
Thank you, Bob. And Shelley, thanks for having me on. And like I said, for anyone who's interested in learning more about what we do, I encourage you to go to www.maritime757.org. And you can see what we're doing at MIBE. And then you can reach out to us if you want to get involved.
Love it, and love the tagline, moving maritime forward together. It's beautiful. All right, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in for another edition of Peninsula Biz Buzz.
Thanks, Brad.